say, a metaphysical apparatus.
That's why I made a political example.
Yes. But and as a metaphysic, then it captures or instantiates or makes immanent the constituted. So it's a difference between the first philosophy, metaphysic, and practical philosophy, the immanent or the constituted. And so is it fair to say then that indifference is the only way to eradicate those differences, to get out of the bind of the metaphysical capture there?
Yeah. In this sense, we should say that the first philosophy is the second philosophy, or the first philosophy is the last philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I choose the political example because it's more concrete. It seems to me more clear, because we live in our politics. We live on these paradoxes. No? Because what I'm telling to you is what in the public law is continuously discussed. For instance, when we had to do in Europe the so-called European Constitution, which is a completely fake thing, because every jurist knows that in order to found a constitution, you must have a constituent power. So, I don't know, a subject. But there, this was made through agreement between states. So, constituted power by excellence. So, there was no constitution. They tried to do a constitution without constituted power, in the form of pacts and agreement between constituted power. This is a crime, on a political point of view. No? Because the state have no power. They are constituted power. They cannot make constitution. Who is the constitutional subject? That's why this is so true that when they tried to have it approved, the people voted no. No? But in the countries where they tried, for instance, in Italy they didn't try. They gave it for. In France too. In France there was no. But in Holland, as you know, and in many states they refused the constitution. Because it was just. It was correct.
In France they said no.
France, right. In France they said no. So, but they still maintain. Now the constitution is still there. A constitution refused by the constituent power by a kind of because a voting people is not a constitution power. Constituent power. It's still a kind of a hybrid. Yes.
But what about in the Lisbon Treaty? When they,
what about?
With the Lisbon Treaty, which is just the new...
The which treaty?
Lisbon Treaty.
Yeah.
Which is just the new European Constitution.
No, but this is a treaty between states. How can this be a constitution?
No, it was, and Ireland being asked to vote again. But that was that the Irish were given the referendum for the Lisbon Treaty 8 months after it was ratified by the European government. And then the Irish rejected it, and now the Irish are being asked to vote again, so they can accept it. So,
but this is the paradox which comes of we have a system which is grounded on these two poles. They are trying to avoid this and producing
fascism.
Absurdities. Well, we can stop now, but if you have some questions. Is it clear the analogy I'm trying to do? So, in Foucault, the care of the self implies a theory of subjectivity, but it is a complex theory of subjectivity which has this form. He says it is the same relation. I think it means that we have to think, what we have to think is a subject which constitutes itself as constituent.
But another way to...
which is the only form of auto-constitution, because otherwise it's not an auto-constitution, a self-constitution. It's a constitution of an object, of something, an alien, another. You have to constitute yourself, not another. Yes?
In this self-reflexive process then, of the paradox, in this self-reflexive process, of the paradox of the problem of the self constituting itself. Is this your way of stating the problem of consciousness?
Probably could be some analogy. What is a consciousness? If it has the form of a self-consciousness, we would have the same problem.
Yeah, because I think in neuroscience today, and cognitive psychology and so on,
yeah,
we have the same problems.
Yeah, but the problem is that very often this problem of the auto-reference, of the auto-constitution, is thought in terms of a meta-language and a language object. So trying to reintroduce the difference between a constituent and an object constituted. That's why that's doomed to failure, all this theory of the auto-reference, the autopoiesis, the self-reference, because finally it's not a self which is meant by an objective, but an objectivized self, a thing. And this is done by distinguishing two levels of language, the meta-language and the language, etc. So there are all the paradoxes implied in that.
So if constituent power is in some way exterior, outside the law, because it's constituent power, how could we distinguish between sovereignty and constituent power? So what is the distinction between constituent power and the state of exception?
This was precisely my objection to Negri. Yeah, because the ambiguity of this, it is a double system which forms, there are two phases of a system, the constituent power and the constituent power. And it's impossible, like Tony Negri attempts, to play one against the other. Because the one alone does not make sense. Will refer to the other, and the second will refer to the first. That's why, in my opinion, we have to abandon the couple. Because also, which is the difference, as you said, between what we call the sovereign power and the constituent power. I don't think it's very difficult to say. And in the French Revolution, the constituent power posited itself as a sovereign power. Yes?
This is perhaps because we had a conversation this morning, because Negri and Heidegger have romanticized the multitude too much to believe that it is a proper subject to become a constituent power.
Yeah, they believe that the multitude is the permanent form, the living form of constituent power. And I'm not criticizing them totally. I understand that what they mean, what they would like to do, is right. What I object is you cannot do this through the concept of a constituent power. Multitude can be a good concept, but you must not think that it is the constituent power. You have to play it differently in order to neutralize the couple, not to play one pole against the other.
It is also lost in representation.
Pardon?
What you hinted before, you said that it is a hybrid democratic politics, in the sense that you cannot break this dualism through the conventional way of elections.
Of course.
You cannot bring the lawmakers to justice through elections.
Elections are not an exercise of constituent power. It's ridiculous to think of this. But this was just an analogy to think the problem of subjectivity, the same problem.
I don't know, I just going back to what I was thinking, is there an issue or possibility of this idea of a retroactive constitution? in going backwards and projecting onto the past a constituted notion of state. And I'm saying again, I'm trying to.
This, like, two-pole system, this dualistic system, constituent power, constituted power, that works through a kind of regressive movement. It implies that there can be a regressive movement which will make present the constituent power. For instance, there are a technical problem: how to modify the constitution. Usually the constitution state that you cannot modify them, except, for instance, the Italian constitution says, but in order to modify them, you must have a majority of, I don't know, a strong majority. Usually to approve a law, you must have a majority 51. In order to change the constitution, you must have a special majority.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you see there? There is a technical problem which tries to represent the constituent power, because if you change the constitution, you are in some way exerting constituent power, no? Because you are going to change it. But there you see that the constitution is not really a constituent power, because if you can change the constitution through a law, even if it's a qualified majority, you are in the constituted power. But so there are many juridical technical problems which show how there is a problem, how the constituent power is alive, can act. For instance, in this way, but this is fake again, because qualified majority is just a law like the others.
Damn.
Okay, so if there is another question, we can go to her dinner.